Hello, I'm William Michael of the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and over the course of the 15 years that I've been developing and running the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, it's been pretty interesting to see how polarizing the Classical Liberal Arts Academy is in modern educational circles. It really divides divides the Catholic population, divides the homeschool population into two very clear groups. And this can be seen by an example from a student in one of my tutoring sessions yesterday. Yesterday I was meeting with a 15-year-old student, and the student was excited to talk about the fact that the family was reading a Life of St. Dominic, and they were excited to talk to me about it because they know that I'm a lay Dominican and would be interested. And what the student wanted to share was that as they were reading about the life of Dominic, they read that he studied logic and philosophy and metaphysics. And they wanted to know if it was possible to study logic and philosophy and metaphysics in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. Not if it's possible, but if they would be permitted by me or recommended to do so. And in this family, you see what the Classical Liberal Arts Academy is for. We have a Catholic family reading the lives of the saints, learning about what the saints studied in history, really and truly, what they studied. And then turning around and saying, that's what we would like to study. We would like to study what the saints study. And when a family actually lives like that, a family that claims to admire and desire to imitate the saints, they can turn around and say, we'd like to study what the saints studied and taught. Can we do that in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy? And the answer is yes. That's exactly what the Classical Liberal Arts Academy is for. And yet if we were to take that same question to any other school, any Catholic school, any other homeschool program, and ask, can we study logic and philosophy and metaphysics like St. Dominic did? The answer would be no. Those courses aren't available. And we could say, oh, well, at Catholic universities, there are logic classes and there are philosophy classes. Well, you show me the content of those logic and philosophy classes at the Catholic universities, and we'll compare it to the logic and philosophy that would have been studied by saints in the past, and we'll see if it's the same studies. They may have the same names, I don't doubt that, but the meanings behind those names, the courses behind those names, are not the same. In the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, they are the same. The names that we use and the meanings we signify with those names are the same as they were in history when the saints used these names. And that's the difference between the Classical Liberal Arts Academy and everything else. The challenge that other schools don't want to face, they don't want to deal with this challenge, and the challenge is, how do we simultaneously address modern issues, modern school requirements, while pursuing real, historic Catholic education? That is a very difficult challenge. I'll admit that myself. I've been working on that for over 20 years to solve that problem and answer that question. How do we deal with things like compulsory education standards, state regulations, modern college admissions? How do we deal with those real-world challenges, but at the same time not neglect real classical Catholic studies? That's a very great, practical, philosophical, strategic challenge that school administrators face and have no interest in. And that's why we have this clear divide. It's been my desire ever since getting into education when I was still a college student. I was already teaching full-time before I had earned my bachelor's degree in classics. Ever since I've been in teaching, my desire has been to figure out how to pursue real, historic, Christian education in modern society without compromising essential subjects and studies, without allowing modern subjects to crowd out from the curriculum what Pope Pius X called more sublime studies, sacred subjects like theology and scholastic philosophy, reasoning, and so on. That's been the challenge that I've had to work to solve in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, and year by year we get closer and closer and closer to solving that problem. And the difference between those who choose to just go with the flow and seek the modern education or make superficial changes to it to try and cause an appearance of difference rather than actually solving the problem and finding the solution. That is the line that divides the Classical Liberal Arts Academy from everything else. And that's why it's so polarizing, because when I say this is what Catholic education has always been, I present it and I can demonstrate it historically. I can demonstrate it philosophically. I can demonstrate it in the lives of the saints, in the words of their own biographers, even in their autobiographies. I can show you real, historic Catholic education. And then when we look at another program or another school, we see that it's simply not the same thing. And it's not because they've improved over time. It's not because there's been development and now it's no such thing. It's because they have abandoned that traditional Catholic education and have just gotten in line with the modern schools and the modern regulations and have been too lazy. It's a laziness issue. Too lazy to commit to the work of fulfilling the goals of Catholic education while also taking care of what's actually required by these modern regulations. They have chosen to not undertake that work and have used it as an excuse to simply abandon historic Catholic education. And when I demonstrate that, it just makes a very clear black or white division between what we're doing in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy and what is being done in other schools, in other homeschool programs. For families, what's upsetting to families and why families get so emotional is that many of them come into the Classical Liberal Arts Academy reading articles, reading the website, and they say, yeah, we're all in. We're ready to go. This is what we want. We want real Catholic education. They come in saying all the right things, and then when they get into it, they find that it's very difficult. Their own lives are filled with habits and things that don't allow them to make progress in these studies. And instead of seeing that as an opportunity for self-examination, to amend their lives, to make improvements to their family culture and daily schedule and so on, instead of seeing it as an opportunity where there's light shining into their life, giving them direction on how to improve and what the actual causes of problems are in modern family life, instead of taking advantage of that opportunity, they choose to cling to their own ways and turn away from real historic Catholic education. They choose to turn away from the education and examples of the saints and just go back to their modern stuff so that they can keep their modern habits. And let's be honest, That's embarrassing when you have to finally admit that you're going to have to go back to the program that several months ago or a year ago you very clearly articulated all the faults of, and you're going back there now. Knowing the faults of that program or of that school, knowing the benefits and virtues of classical Catholic education, and choosing one rather than the other, contrary to your own arguments, which you made to explain why you were coming into the Classical Liberal Arts Academy in the first place. And so that's why the Classical Liberal Arts Academy is just different from anything else. It's polarizing, it's objective, it's black and white, and it challenges us. It challenges me every day. I have to face the challenge that the lives and examples of the saints provide to me. I have to look at something like the Jesuits' Ratio Studiorum and look at the diligence and the wisdom of those schoolmasters, and then come to practice it and realize this is exhausting, this is sacrificial, this is difficult, this is thankless work in this world. This is very difficult work. And face the difficulty and realize that those holy men undertook this work and overcame all of these obstacles and difficulties in their own generations. And I'm challenged to commit to the principles, to commit to the truth of it, and keep working and keep persevering in the development of the program, in improving our ability to help students, in helping parents and explaining things to parents, in working with families to help them patiently make those changes in their lives over time. It's a very difficult work. You know, I tell stories all the time about families that I've seen completely transform over years, come into the academy, having an interest in classical studies, partly ignorant, partly sincere and good, but really not knowing what they're getting into, then getting into it and struggling very badly and being discouraged and overwhelmed, but persevering, and now 5-6 years later being successful in these studies. To me, those are the success stories, where families come in with principles, struggle, but stay committed to those principles, and then actually overcome the obstacles, improve their lives, and accomplish these great goals of classical Catholic education. I've seen that time and time again. But for every one family that I've seen that, I've seen 20 families get to that difficult part where they're challenged and choose to throw in the towel and get back to modern studies. And then they go off back to those modern studies and they criticize and complain about the academy. But we have students succeeding, and the program continues to grow. Ever since it started, I've had parents who have struggled to do well, call fire from heaven down upon the academy, telling me how stupid things are, how ridiculous it is, impossible, all these things. Well, they're wrong. 15 years later, it's as strong as ever. Students have been through many of our courses. We've got students in religious communities studying for the priesthood, on to adult careers and so on. The academy continues to develop and work to fulfill its mission, and attempts to criticize it or find fault with it while ignoring the obvious problem with returning to modern studies is not a serious argument. When I was a school teacher, I taught in private Christian schools, and we would often have a parent who was unhappy, usually because the student wasn't getting good grades. And the parents would start complaining, and it'd be in parent-teacher conferences. You'd get these complaints about a book we're studying, or the curriculum, or some other kids in class who are causing trouble or whatever. And the parents would start complaining, and they'd have this list of things that they were not happy with in our Christian school, and they were great Christian schools. But they'd be unhappy and complaining, and so the complaining would go on for a while, and then all of a sudden we'd find out that they withdrew from the school and the kid was enrolled in the local public school. And that's the kind of spiteful, insincere criticism that's common in Christian educational circles. They'll criticize the Christian school, find fault with this, that, or this, and then jump into an alternative that has 10 times worse faults and troubles. And that kind of criticism, that kind of behavior obviously can't be taken seriously. It's irrational and and just unjustifiable. And I see that all the time. But this is why the Classical Liberal Arts Academy is polarizing. It just draws a line between two clearly different things and says this is demonstrably the historical educational program. These are the courses that were studied by the saints and wise men in history. This isn't an opinion. This isn't a debate. This isn't the normal modern, theorizing about what was done in the past. This is demonstrable historical fact. I can show you old textbooks. I can show you old books written by religious communities. I can show you biographies of saints. We can go on and on through all of the evidence to show that this is what St. Dominic studied, this is what St. Thomas taught, this is what Aristotle taught. This is not a mystery or an opinion. This is historic fact. We can demonstrate that this is the education that was not only studied by wise men and saints, but taught by them and recommended by them to anyone who asked them what we should study to become wise. And so that line is drawn where you're either with the truth historically or you're not with the truth historically. You're either a Catholic in a modern anti-Catholic study program, or you're a Catholic claiming to be interested in saints, claiming to be seeking to raise saints and imitate saints when you're not imitating the saints. You're not even following the advice or example of the saints. And we make that line very clear, very objective, and there's nothing that can be said. People can say they don't like my personality. They can say they don't like online studies. They can say they don't like using computers, or they don't. They can make all these different, distracting arguments against the program. But the substance of the issue is, are we studying what we should be studying or not? It's very simple. Are we studying what we should be studying or not? If we go and read something like Pope Leo XIII's encyclical on the restoration of Christian philosophy, are we establishing or reestablishing the foundation of Christian education and Christian philosophy, or are we not? When we read Pope Pius X talking against modernism and about the necessity of defending and restoring scholastic philosophy, are we training children with that in view or not? It's just very simple, very black and white, clear cut and objective. This isn't a debate. Now, when parents say things like, well, we don't like using the computer. Nobody likes using the computer. I don't like driving to work. There's a million things I don't like, but principles override preferences. Principles override preferences. It doesn't matter what we like and dislike. In 2022, at this state of things, this education is available to Catholic students through the internet. That's a fact. It's not available in published books. It's not available in local schools. It's available in one place on the internet, and the principle should override personal preferences. I would rather not study on the internet as well. I would rather be sitting in a giant library filled with all of these old books in print with a nice big wooden desk. That would obviously be my present by preference, but who cares? It's not possible today. And so in order to pursue the principle and do what's necessary and right, I have to make use of what is available, not make any excuses, and pursue the fulfillment of the true goals of Catholic education with what's available. And that's how Catholic parents should think. And if they would think like that, they would be able to achieve the ends of this education. So arguments about preferences, arguments about what we like, dislike, what the kids like, dislike. The kids are going to dislike most of anything related to studies. So that's really not a serious argument to say, oh, well, my child doesn't like. What does the child like? Does the child like studying logic? Does the child like memorizing grammar rules? No. Education's not fun. It's hard work. It takes discipline and sacrifice. No one's going to like real education. St. John Henry Newman explained this in his book on the idea of the university. Most people will not like any subjects that require disciplined study and thinking. That's just a fact. It's got nothing to do with the internet. You say, well, my son doesn't like to read books online. No, that's not true. He won't like to read Aristotle in print either because it's very difficult reading. It's got nothing to do with the online text. If the principles are in place, we can override preferences, overcome obstacles, and really think about what we're complaining about. It's so ridiculous. To hear people complaining that they can't study the classical liberal arts because, reading on a screen hurts their eyes. Like, what is this Epicurean worldview we have where, the priority in life is to avoid any physical inconvenience or pain? You just see that the foundation of Christian virtue is not even in place, and that becomes the source of the complaints. And so as I work, at first, earlier in my work with the Academy, I would get upset about complaints, and I'd try to find ways to accommodate parents and things like that. But I've learned my lesson. I've learned that those accommodations will never stop. As soon as one level is made, they'll be looking for another level. And what they're really looking for is they're hoping that I'll eventually offer a modern program that's cheaper than it is available elsewhere. That's really all they're looking for. They're not looking at the core courses in our curriculum. They're not studying Latin. They're not studying grammar. They're not studying reasoning. They're not interested in classical mathematics or philosophy. They're not studying the theology courses. They're in world chronology. They're playing around with, some modern math course in the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. And it's just not realistic. So the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, I think, is going to continue to be polarizing because it just makes the case for real classical Catholic education so crystal clear. People who, let's say, read that book, Understanding Classical Catholic Education, with a sincere interest in learning what's true, learn from that book without any question what's true, and they know that. And then the issue is how they respond. And if they respond positively and pursue the truth and persevere, they're the people who love the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. And if they're the people who get into it and find things difficult, or they find their life is too chaotic to make progress, or they don't have the patience to help their children and be forbearing with their children as their children complain or resist, which is just normal in education, they then use all that for excuses and bounce out back to some other program, some Dorothy Sayers fake classical education where they just make up nonsense, or back to some modern public school curriculum where they're not even studying Catholic subjects anymore, and yet still maintain all the talk about saints and religion and all this kind of stuff. Classical Liberal Arts Academy, as I explained in a video recently, is for people who want to do what the saints did and understand it's going to take time, understand it's going to be difficult, understand they're going to have to amend their lives and learn new habits, and they're willing to do so because they sincerely want to imitate wise men and saints in education, both for themselves and for their children. And those who don't have that sincere interest, it's going to be something somewhere along the line where they're going to, not be able to continue for whatever reason. They won't seek help. They never seek help. They simply run into a difficulty or find some inconvenience or have some contradictory preference, and they use that to justify going back to a program, like I said, going back to a program that when they came into the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, they could articulate all the faults of. And they prove that they are well aware of the faults of those other programs. They explain that when they come into the academy, and then when they go back, they act as if they know no such thing. And the Classical Liberal Arts Academy isn't for people like that. And this is why it's polarizing. And at this point in my life, I am so settled and comfortable with our mission. I'm so happy with the students that I have who are sincere, the parents who are sincere and are willing to overcome whatever difficulties we face and continue to work patiently. We have such a strong foundation of families that are willing to do the work and persevere over time. And every year we get a batch of new families that have a core of really sincere interest in these studies. And we continue to grow stronger over time. And the mission is clear. The truth is demonstrable. There's no controversy. And that's what makes the Classical Liberal Arts Academy so polarizing. So if you are considering the Classical Liberal Arts Academy, realize that this is the question. The question is not, should we study online or offline? Should we use online lessons or printed books? Should we study classical math or modern math? Should we study logic or social studies? Those aren't the questions. Those aren't the questions. Many of those educational, technical, it's all distraction from the real issue. The real issue is very simple, very clear. Do you want to pursue the education that was pursued by wise men and saints throughout church history or not? It's a very simple, black and white question. Follow the saints and wise men or not? If you choose to follow the saints and wise men, there's only one option for you. It's the Classical Liberal Arts Academy. It's the only option. And the difficulties that come up, you'll find grace to overcome. You'll humble yourself and ask for help. You'll patiently continue to work and learn. You'll make adjustments in your life that allow you to pursue these studies, and you'll accomplish the goal if you're sincere. Because this is the pursuit of wisdom. This is one of the chief works of the Christian life, the pursuit of wisdom through study. You will overcome these things if you have a sincere desire to follow the saints and wise men in the pursuit of wisdom. That's what this is. But if your interest is not sincere, or if you have ulterior motives, like you're hoping to make a modern transcript look cool, you're not going to be able to overcome the challenges. And it's going to divide the groups very clearly between those who want it sincerely and those who don't. If you want it sincerely, you should move forward confidently, because God's going to give you grace. If you're willing to persevere and pray and work, you'll have grace to overcome all the difficulties and persevere to the end and enjoy the benefits of these studies. You'll also have the humility to ask for help. You won't be struggling with these things. You'll ask for help. You'll be patient. You'll be continuously making improvements in your life. You'll overcome the difficulties, persevere in the studies, and you'll also, as you live that life, the studies will become more and more clear because they'll be enlightened by your increasing imitation of the lives of the saints. So you'll be successful if you're interested, and you should get started confident that you're going to be able to do it, as long as you're interest is sincere. And if your interest is not sincere, don't bother with the fake arguments and the complaints, because kids are succeeding in these studies. All the problems are easily overcome by a sincere interest to overcome them. And we're just going to continue getting better and better and reaching higher and higher every year. And even if there is a complaint made 5 years ago, it's probably not true anymore today. Complaints that are going to be made today won't be true in a year from now, because we're just going to keep getting better. So I encourage you to pursue these studies, trusting in the wisdom of the wise men and saints. Trust that they know better than you. Trust that their way is better than what appears to you to be a different or better way. And give them the opportunity to teach you. Give yourself the opportunity to learn. And realize that everyone goes in the modern direction, not because it's right, but because it's easy. And the world is just full of excuse making. Give the saints and wise men a chance. Be willing to learn and grow. Be willing to face the challenges and have the confidence to know that you're actually pursuing the learning that was pursued by the saints and sharing in that work, in the same books, the same lessons, the same ideas. That should be a motivation if you're sincere. And if you are sincere, you will succeed. So I hope that's helpful in explaining why the academy is so polarizing, why people don't talk about it, why homeschool families who know about it don't talk about it, why no one shares links about it. It's polarizing, it's exposing, it's challenging, and that's because it's true, and we can prove that. I hope that's helpful. God bless.